G'day, ZiggyD here, and today I want to give you guys some tips in Diablo III Reaper of Souls for gearing up your fresh level 70s to get into Torment 1 farming. So I've been getting a lot of questions on the stream from people asking, what's the most efficient way to sort of gear up, to get yourself into Torment? What's that initial sort of gearing period, and how do you get past that? Well, we've done a bunch of different testing by this point. I've sort of farmed a bunch of different ways, from like doing the campaign, to farming some like little zones, to doing split bounties on low difficulties, bounties on higher difficulties, and even high difficulty rifts, and trying to chain those both solo and with groups. And from all of that testing, I've sort of discovered that doing bounties on normal is definitely the best way to gear a new character. You're getting a lot of crafting materials, you're getting a lot of rares, you're able to sort of craft those rares up and to get that initial base of rares going. That's definitely the most important first stepping stone. And also from doing those bounties and getting those bounties done really quickly, you're getting lots and lots of chances to get the bounty legendaries, and the bounty legendaries are really big stepping stones into Torment 1 farming. So I did do some Torment 1 farming pretty efficiently. Well, I was getting up to the 600k DPS, 5 million toughness sort of range with a combination of a few legendaries and rares. And I was farming Torment 1 and it was okay. It was reasonably efficient, but not great. But once I started to accrue a few of those bounty legendaries, that's when things started to really turn around. And I was sort of taking a bit of a look at the bounty legendary list, and sort of figured out this is probably the best way for most people to do this. So for example, two of the bounty legendaries that have really propelled me forwards into a super efficient bit like in Torment 1 rift farming, essentially, which is where you want to get. You want to be able to farm the highest level possible rifts and get a lot of legendaries and do a lot of gambling that way. But the two ones that really propelled me forwards were the Gloves of Worship, which although they're currently bugged, are still excellent gloves even after they get fixed to be 10 minutes for all of the shrines. Still having those shrines for 10 minutes is a pretty big deal. And the Pride's Fall, which it helps me a lot on my Demon Hunter by reducing my resource costs. For the most part, like most of the time, my resource costs are reduced. And the other thing is like the legendary weapon. Now I got a Dinetta's Revenge, however it's very easy to get your first legendary weapon through those bounties. So let's just kind of go through the list and talk about those bounty specific legendaries, and then I'll talk about the best ways to actually go about farming that. So if I switch on over here, this is a full list. I'll link this to you guys in the description below. This is a full list of the different bounties that are available in each of the bounty bags, courtesy of Diablo Mandan. So we have we'll start off with Act 4. Act 4 has the bounties from every single zone in it. Now I actually don't think it's worth farming Act 4 if you're solo. I wouldn't bother doing Act 4, because if you're going for a specific legendary from these bounty lists here, then Act 4 will have the lowest chance out of any act of dropping that legendary, so it's really not worth doing. If you're farming by yourself, you should just farm the one act that is most important for you. So, as a Demon Hunter, I recommend, well, as any class, I recommend going for your weapon first, because the difference between a rare weapon and a legendary weapon, we can switch on over to the game here, is pretty significant. Like, okay, so here's an example of a really GG rare weapon, for at this point in the game, this is like the best rare weapon I've ever seen, the best rare one-handed crossbow I've ever seen. 2274 DPS, Dex Vitality, and the crit damage for the socket. So, comparing that to the legendary Dinettas, and this is just an averagely rolled Dinettas, it can get a lot better than this. That's incredible, the amount of difference there. We're looking at, almost a bit over 220 extra DPS, base DPS, which is really important, and then much more of the actual main stats. You can see the main stats on the Dinettas go up to 750, whereas the rares only go up to 625. Huge difference between legendaries and rares, and this is the same across all legendaries. So the biggest thing to really propel you forwards, especially in softcore, but pretty much in any case, is going to be to increase that DPS a lot, and it's going to allow you to kill things much faster and much more efficiently. And also it's going to help you farming a little bit more in that normal while you collect up the rest of the things you need to get going in Torment really well. So looking at this, you want to pick the act that is the best for you. As a Demon Hunter, for example, I want to go for Hell Trapper. That's the one-handed legendary crossbow. It's actually quite a good crossbow too, so I'll probably farm up one of these pretty soon for my offhand, and that'll be a nice jump forwards for me as well. But if you're using two rares at the moment, or if you're using a two-handed rare bow, then you probably want to go for Hell Trapper. This is a very nice starting point, and one-handed crossbows seem to be in pretty good state at the moment in Diablo III Reaper of Souls. So you want to be like, Act 5, alright, I'm going to farm Act 5, and you just run Act 5 yourself on the lowest difficulty, normal, as fast as possible, doing those bounties. Now, you also might want to keep an eye out for a few other things, like say the Cloak of Deception might be a nice legendary cloak to go for, and you might also want to say you're a barbarian, or you're just any character going for a melee weapon. You probably want to go Act 1 for Mad Monarch's Scepter. These are the main things to go for. Like, look at the weapon first, and then start to look at a few of the other things that you can go for, maybe some of the jewelry and stuff like that. But what I recommend doing is just like focusing on the weapon first, getting whatever weapon you need, so either Mad Monarch's Scepter, Hell Trapper, or if you like, want to go for one of the specific ones, like I believe there's a Witch Doctor dagger in here. If you want to go for one of these first, then I would go for those. I don't even know there's actually not a specific Witch Doctor dagger, it's just a dagger in general. Okay, so you want to go for like those specific weapons that are going to help you most. So beyond that point, I think the best thing you can possibly do is get a 4-man group together and do what's called split bounty farming. This is something you guys may or may not have heard about by now, but it's a very popular method of farming bounties very quickly and very efficiently. Essentially, it allows you to do 4 times the amount of bounties in the time it would normally take you to do 1. So while you're farming the act you think is really important, if you're doing that solo, that's fine. You just keep farming that act over and over again. But when you get a 4-man group together doing this split bounty farming method, you're getting 4 times the amount of legendaries, 4 times as quickly, and as well as a bunch of extra XP and gold as well. So it's really good stuff. So the way split bounty farming works is you get a party of 4 together, you play on normal difficulty so you can clear very efficiently and very quickly even when separate, and what you all do is you just go to a different act. You just pick whichever act you prefer. I usually go to Act 1 because it's my favorite act. I jump in and start doing Act 1 bounties. The other guy might go to Act 3, someone else might go to Act 2, and then everyone splits up. You just have 4 people, 1 in each different act. Now everyone just does their bounties as quickly as they can do possibly solo, and everyone gets the reward. Whenever a bounty is completed, everyone gets the XP and gold, and whenever all of the bounties are completed in that zone and you go talk to Tyrael and you get your bounty bag, everyone gets the bounty bags, so the Heraldric caches. So at the same time, everyone's getting those bounties much more quickly. It's a really brilliant sort of farming method, and it's very effective for getting a lot of rares, getting a lot of legendaries, especially those cache legendaries, as quickly as possible. And then, once you've done all 4 of your separate acts, or, whenever you're done, you just go help someone else out an act in a separate zone to them, and then you just all eventually team up and take down whatever act is left over as well, doing separate zones, just like making sure you're always in separate spots, and then just teaming up for the last few if you need to. And it's super fast, super efficient, and I got a ton of legendaries this way and a ton of other rares and things like that, and really propelled me forward. So that's the one way I want to sort of recommend to you guys to gear up early on. You'll get those initial legendaries you need, you'll get that legendary weapon nice and quick, and you'll get a few of those other legendaries which will help you out, like for example Gloves of Worship and Pride's Fall, and a few of the other rings and amulets and stuff that are available in there. So the next thing I want to talk about, just as general mindset as you're starting to gear up, I think this is something people need to start to think about in Reaper of Souls as they're trying to move towards Torment 1, is it's actually really important to think about utility and the additional not tooltip DPS. So tooltip DPS has been the focus in Diablo 3 vanilla, for a very long time. We're trying to inflate that tooltip DPS, trying to break that 1 million DPS mark in Reaper of Souls, and I still see people really focused on that. And indeed at the start, I was pretty focused on that as well. I was trying to pump up my Demon Hunter's DPS as much as possible. However, I started to realize that I was even willing to drop some DPS as long as it meant that I was able to increase my utility and increase my actual percentage, my effective DPS scaling, essentially. So I'm talking about things like increased cluster arrow damage here on my cluster arrow spec. 13% increased cluster arrow damage is far more effective than 50k tooltip DPS. It makes a huge difference to your actual clear speed. And then I'm also talking about things like percentage fire damage. 20% increased damage to fire skills is massive. I use 2 different fire skills here. I use chakrams and I use the cluster arrows, all fire skills. They all get benefiting from that very well. And then I'm also talking about the other utility stuff. So I'm talking about Reaper's Wraps. I crafted these as a high priority item. This is one of the first things I tried to craft, and I recently released a guide on it. Although the crafting material for this is currently bugged, hopefully that's fixed soon. It's this is an example of utility you want to look out for. Even if I had to drop DPS from another potentially better braces, and there are better braces out there, higher DPS braces, Reaper's Wraps gives you health globes, restore primary resource. What that means is I have primary resource very often. I'm full on primary resource all of the time, and I'm able to just simply put out a heap of those cluster arrows. And cluster arrows, my high damage skill, getting more of those out is far more important than 100. I'd sacrifice 100k tooltip DPS for that in a heartbeat. The ability to spam cluster arrow freely instead of sort of having to wait and use a hatred generator. For example, I've gotten my build to the point now where I don't need to use a hatred generator. That's an example of utility utility really taking over, I'd easily sacrifice 50k DPS to, you know, not have to ever use a hatred generator again. I can use chakrams instead. Higher damage, better AoE than any hatred generator in the game, and I can use that now because I've been able to really focus on that utility. You know, I've gone for the Reaper's Wraps, I've gone for the Pride's Fall, I've got the Gloves of Worship going, and I've got my you know, extra hatred regen, resource cost reduction, and things like that going as much as possible. So really, don't focus too much on your tooltip DPS, although it's important to have a nice base DPS, and you know, you do want to try and get your crit chance, crit damage, and stuff like that high. You really want to also consider that utility and those percentage modifiers that increase your effective DPS. Anyway, hopefully that helps you guys. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.